And we're good. Okay, are we on?
I don't know. We
Yeah,
haven't
we're
talked
on.
over.
Okay,
Oh,
cool. Yeah,
oh.
yeah. Hello, everybody.
Awesome.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey guys.
Whoa.
As you
Whoa.
can see here, we're doing things a little bit differently now. Right now, we're streaming on a Sunday, and Cabo's not streaming, so this is kind of botched on my end, but that's okay.
Yeah. I'll get us started then.
Okay.
Yeah. So welcome everyone. So I'm your host here, Half Slashed, and we're gonna talk about tournaments today, but a bit different than usual. We're actually gonna be focusing on the production side of things. So if you're hosting a tournament, there's all kinds of things that you don't usually see as like a visible role. And this is the episode for all of that. So we have three people who pretty much exclusively do things that I would classify as administrative and or production value adding tasks. And yeah, I'll just let them all introduce themselves, starting with Bracket K Bracket.
Hello, everyone. So, I'm Kay, and you probably know me mainly as an OC referee, but I also host tournaments and I design spreadsheets.
All right, we got the as far as from the domain of videos, we have Gordon.
Hello. I map, and I do mapping contests. I host mapping contests. I judge for mapping contests. Um, Other than that, I did recently revive as a host for tournaments yet again.
Cool. And last but not least, the man who was the first voice you probably heard today, that is K2. So
Hi. So some of you may know me from my graphics work. So I've been a professional freelance graphic designer for about a decade, and I mostly am active in the tournament scene. Uh, Predominantly with Corsace, but this year I've been doing the OWC series as well.
awesome. So yeah, this is mostly production value. Some of those of you who may know me as kind of the pool guy or that guy that just shows up and casts random stuff. As a result, these three subject matter experts will be doing most of the talking on this one. Anything about the mapping side of things, we'll have to wait to another episode. So let's get off to a good start here, talking about marketing and impact for tournaments nowadays.
So going off, what I would just want to say is a lot of tournaments nowadays, and I think a lot of like people who are involved in anything OSU related, especially mapping, um, a lot of people do things because they're really passionate about it. But at the same time, we're starting to see a trend in which a lot of people are starting to seek out compensation for it as well. And you're gonna like, if you guys are active on Twitter, you're a big thing like happening recently is just like people, uh, firing out commissions for almost anything, mapping mentorships, maps, hit sounding, all the niche stuff. And like graphics is no exception, and even like sheets like I think Kay can tell us about something about the sheets as well. But
Oh,
yeah,
so,
yeah.
oh, so basically, like, I've been actively spreadsheeting probably for the past, like, year and a half now. And the issue about spreadsheeting is always, um, you should fall into three major categories. It's readability is the most important. How you convey information, like layouts or style or whatever, and then the last one is just artistic value. And basically what's happening is that you're trying to give information to people, which are tournament players, but also like other tournament staff that aren't necessarily playing in the tournament who want to scout you out. And that's essentially like a job as a spreadsheeter. Lately, I've been more towards taking design to kind of combine all three elements. And that kind of started probably around uh late 2021 with my tournament Case Finesse Cup first iteration. And it's kind of just skyrocketed from there. But you cannot have a solid sheet design without solid GFX. So I would really call on to K2 here to just kind of explain his GFX process and then how I would bounce off of that.
Oh, well, I think we're heading like a little bit too fast now.
Yeah, a little too fast.
A little too fast. But I was gonna
Yeah,
ask you about like the compensation for like the sheeting part as well, because like there was a thing about that.
I do
as
it
well.
for free 99
Yo,
now
free.
now a lot of people, I have seen lately arguments of like commissioning for sheets and base prices and whatnot, like you would an actual graphic designer. My only gripe with it is that because a spreadsheet is largely based on the GFX, if you don't have really stellar GFX or something that can lend ideas, you as a spreadsheeter probably are a little bit stuck. They're like the capabilities of Google Sheets is, as we all know, not very good. And in doing so, what you might find in a design is might be hard. Like you might want to do something and it's just not possible because it doesn't match with the GFX or whatever. I personally wouldn't know how to feel if someone commissioned me to design their spreadsheets. I would probably ask for a very low price, probably nothing drastic. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think
Yeah, just
honestly,
something super
like,
drastic. Like $10 is fine, I guess. But it just I mean, it's like regular GFX, right? It always depends on the complexity, how much time I have to spend, and urgency and whatnot.
I think like the only other beneficial like form of like getting money out of that would be how much you like Gunga code the Google Sheet.
Yeah.
But even then, I don't think it has like huge extents of like what you can
Yeah.
fully achieve unless you're like doing a website instead.
I think
Exactly. I think at
yeah.
that point you just have to go with the website.
I think that's the
someone
thing,
say
right?
coding?
It's like, oh.
No, just pop me on my hold for a sec.
I think that's the thing, right? It's like, there's a whole thing about like, regarding compensation, it's like, there's a whole thing where it's like, if you're good at something, you shouldn't do it for free, right? But at the same time, it's kind of the whole deal with like getting paid for mapping, for example, because unless it's like a full custom song that you're actually paying for and you're paying for the background and everything like that, if you're like getting paid to map a song that's already out and all the licenses aren't really sorted out, like licensing to begin with has always been a gray area in Osu, but like it's kind of like doing like something like that where it's like you kind of have to justify whether um, something should be compensated or not for the labor, right? Um, that being said, like if you are to compensate somebody, you also got to make sure, obviously, things are within budget as well. So, uh, most of the tournaments are usually community funded, and a major part of the finances goes towards prize pool and customs. Especially now, customs are a big part in the tournament scene. Um, it's
Yeah, I think
also
with the
yeah.
I think oh sorry, I think the issue with like is that every single OSU tournament operates at a loss.
Yeah,
Every single one. And whether it be a loss of money or a loss of time or mental sanity,
yeah,
we all operate
Ooh.
to a degree at a loss. And as a tournament host, in my very personal opinion, this is how your division comes up, is that the vast majority of your funds, if you even have one, would go to your prize pool. That's if you have a prize pool. The second thing would be graphics. If anything, a lot of graphics artists do not work for free, and if they do, then expect. I would say to expect them to not be at the top of for you not to be at the top of their priority list compared to their clients that actually pay them. Since if you're the expectation is that if you're getting paid, you receive the service in a timely manner.
Mhm.
Now, and then after that, you would probably go to auxiliaries, like skins or Gosu or other stuff that requires GFX, and then everything else is within a host jurisdiction. And the GFX is essentially everything in a tournament. You cannot advertise your tournament well, and you cannot express information, in my opinion, well without proper GFX. And it's probably the most important thing in tournaments. Like, you look at badges as well. You
Mhm.
want to look at a badge that is visually appealing, and that of course takes a competent and well-versed GFX artist.
That's the thing is it's only going to the budget is only going to increase as production values go up within the tournament scene. Um, personally speaking, for myself, I also operate at a huge loss because we the demographic of Osu players are obviously just preteens to young adults who are still in school and probably don't have a part-time job yet, or they make minimum wage working at McDonald's or whatever like that. And a number of tournaments that we work with, personally, for all of us, they cater to probably majority of the top players, and probably a good percentage of them make money full time from Twitch streams or donations or whatever like that. So all in all, it's safe to say that you're not gonna be, and it's not to discourage anybody wanting to do this as a job. You definitely have to have another side hustle going on. You're definitely not going to be finding your gold here, like as a main thing. And I undercut my prices when I charge people for commissions, just so I can make myself approachable, even though that means you know taking more commissions, and it does drive up my sanity because you're constantly being pulled from side to side. But unfortunately, that's one thing that you're gonna have to expect if you ever get into the graphics portion of this field as well. And I
I
can
mean, not only that, but
yeah,
spreadsheets too.
yeah.
Constantly keep upkeeping backend and setting it up. Obviously, the tournament community has been very blessed where there are lots of templates available and a decent amount of cheaters, but it doesn't mean that our thing is still easy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of clockwork into
Yeah,
making
exactly.
this go.
And backend, as well as I mean, backend, in my the templates do try to be as user friendly, in my opinion, as possible, or very clear cut instructions on tournament hosts. But sometimes you don't understand everything, and that's completely fine, because it is hard, and it is something new that that of the vast majority of people, especially if they're starting to get into the scene, they don't know about and they don't understand it, and that's completely fine. Designing, however, all of the front end, that in my opinion is very much a learn by experience thing. You can't really have someone tell you, "Oh, you should make this blue or you should make this red." It's very much a, here, experiment with this, find what calls to you, and then you kind of take a step back and look at it and say, "Oh, I like this. I think I should change this or change that."
Mhm.
And I would say Midnight Epiphanies might be your best friend, where it's like, oh, I have this really awesome spreadsheet idea, or this certain pattern would go great with this GFX, and it's those little things that really, in my opinion, kind of keep me grounded, where I can feel like, oh, I'm not plateauing in my designs.
Mhm.
As well as like the constant hours spent in VC, just like communicating ideas, especially like with your designers or like I guess video people too. I
Yeah.
suppose.
Yes, absolutely.
Everything is like meant to have impact in one way or another, and I think really the only like compensated side is like artist as a whole. Not
Yeah.
to call like maps not art per se, but I mean like again as we go back on like licensing and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
map like compensation for maps has always been in that like gray area.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, you should be paid for the effort, but then at the same time, it's not your song.
Well, in particular, I'd say that the artists that get compensated for their work are the ones that are getting compensated already in just the global market. So it's just like if
That's
you can
pretty
sell
akin
your
to
services.
spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like because my work would, if I was making a front end design, everything that I make down to the hex codes that I use to like even just using the banner on the cover, everything is essentially revolved around the main GFX, the main banner of the forum. And this ties back to what I said earlier of if you don't necessarily have the most insane GFX, or even if you have something a little bit on the simpler side, it is your job to accentuate that and, market it accordingly.
Mhm.
Because if you do something completely different, that's not staying true to the source material.
Yeah. But speaking of which, like in terms of GFX, I like to like show people like over time how like what things have become. So that is the wrong screen. That is Gordon's screen. Okay, my bad.
Oh.
But here you go. So a lot of like back then, especially, I can't pull like anything really old because the images have already like probably expired. Everybody used Push back then, right? And they have an expiry link, and Push is also down now. But anyways, back then, like a lot of tournaments, were all just forum post text based, no graphics, no GFX. If anything, you just run your, I don't even know if this is up still, but you just run your thing through the spreadsheet, and it's like a really substandard spreadsheet design. And that's about it. Like even still today, I'm not saying like that is the way back then, because even still, like there's a lot of tournaments. If you look in the tournaments category in the forum posts, in the forum section, a lot of tournaments still start out like that. It's not to say that they're not going to go anywhere. They probably have their other means of like advertising it. They probably have their means of like getting exposure, right? But a lot of tournaments typically, especially the more low budget ones, they're just bog standard forum posts. And then over time, and I started around like 2015, 2016, even though I've been playing the game for a lot longer. Yeah, this is like another example. There's effort, but most of the something like this as well. They like most of the tournaments, I feel like back then, and that's not to say like they weren't bad. It's just there were a lot of limitations on what we can do as well. Okay, like you can go all out in terms of like, graphic design is whatever, but let's be honest, like back then most people who like did graphics, like they just like
took a
looked up-
random landscape and then
Yeah.
found like a transparent like rip for any kind of like
Unironically, when I first started tournament staffing, that's how GFX kind of looked like. For the
yeah,
tournaments
like
that I were in.
very stock. This is like, I think, yeah,
Stock image, text
very
over.
very stock like tournament, or like just Osu graphic design, where you just put like a random anime background, you put some text, you add some stroke on it, and then maybe some like really stock Photoshop effects, or like if you use GIMP because GIMP was free. And then Streamwise was very limited as well. And this is like one of my examples. I did TOC5 back in This was like one of my first tournaments back in 2016. The tourney client was really limited in terms of what you could do with it because aside from the skin itself, um, the only thing you could do was you could just change the background and then have to you'd have to make your background uh to essentially the background is the overlay, if that makes sense, right? Because like Twitch streams, like if you unless you were like a big name streamer or like you were a streamer, um you'd have to like I didn't know a lot back then as well. Like you'd have to kind of like work with the limitations of the turning client, and then you also had to get pay. You were also operating at a loss back then because you had to pay for supporter to get tourney access. I think that was the way. I think you
Yeah.
didn't.
Yep.
Yeah. You'd have to pay for supporter to get tourney access. So you were still basically operating at a loss, and just you'd also have to have a computer that can support tourney client, all that kind of stuff. It was kind of a pain in the ass back then, but this was what most tournaments ran like, and then this was like one of the early Sweet G Cups. Again, stock Osu graphics. You get some random anime background, some text on, outline it, and there you go. A lot of tournaments, low budget tournaments, still run like that. Run with these kind of graphics, and this was like the standard design for back in the day. But then now over I think around 2018, 2019, we're seeing a lot more drastic changes in what tournaments are. So, oh yeah, this was like OWC is like stock tournament design, stock OSU design. No frills. They don't really touch up on like they don't really change anything within the tourney client. That was about it. And then yeah, now we're seeing like more effort in production. You're seeing graphic designers now. Like somehow graphic designers just rose from the grave and started doing this stuff like um uh,
I have a bit of an anecdote to share
yeah,
on
go ahead.
old to new production here. So the biggest example that comes to mind, at least in my experience here, is
Yeah.
like in the old days, Osu Duel Cup. So this was a tournament ran by Azer and Smoothie World,
Mhm.
and it was like one of the tournaments that was really trying to push the envelope when it came to production value. And it's funny you mentioned like the scenic backgrounds and stuff because it's like even that
Yeah.
was still like a part. So what they did back then is they would like take an OBS overlay and they'd be like showing all these different like sources, like web
Yeah.
sources for like image cards of maps and like players and stats and all of that stuff.
I
And
forgot Duel Cup.
when you guys were talking about the scenic like background meta for graphics, I'm just reminded when I was like, because I was actually managing the assets and I was told, yeah, for these just go on Kona-chan and search the scenic tag and go to town, have fun. So
Oh.
that was funny, but also it's like tournaments like that really started to push the envelope because it's like to set yourself apart. I've noticed that tournaments have kind of gone to more like they've realized, okay, the stuff that is easily visible is the stuff that really sets tournaments apart. You want to catch
Yeah.
people live, you got to invest in that. And so it's like a natural conclusion of we can't just do this stock anime whatever Kona-chan scenic search stuff for our graphics anymore. We now need to actually go and find like talent, and they are there. In fact, a lot of them are also part of that demographic, and they don't yet have like they need to build their portfolios and such, and this stuff certainly helps, I
Yeah.
believe. So
Like definitely like if I didn't like if I wasn't in the scene and I didn't push to stay in the scene, I probably would not be doing what I'd be doing today as a
Oh, same.
yeah, as a
Oh, yeah.
commercial freelance graphic designer as well. Like I would not reach to that point. But like I'm kind of glad like the um it's going the way it is right now because at the same time like as like tournaments go higher budget and like they push the limits in terms of production value, it just means that it gives whoever who is working on the tournament itself a chance to push themselves on whatever they do, whether it be mapping, whether it be design, whether it be like video production, streaming, sheets, and whatnot as well. And like we, like us three, we always like talk about this like on our own time as well, right? And we always like consult each other for in terms of like opinions for like what we're currently doing, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the most important thing is the social aspect also of, hey, do you think you could critique this for me? But also it's just to get a second pair of eyes because
Yeah.
you look at something and you're just like, oh, does this like I don't know how to feel about this or artist block or whatever. So having and it's not even just about walking away and starting fresh. It's literally just getting a different person, getting a different opinion and taking their critiques as you would.
Yeah. Like here's
Ye-
like here's the pair, Fleslin and Ali, like, or Siu, big graphics couple, and they just kind of took over the storm in terms of like major graphics. Like you have Konyo Cup, you have Clover Cup, and then um you have oh look, here it is,
Whoa.
you have Finesse Cup. So that was a major trend in terms of like tournament design. They were just kind of like showing up everywhere. I don't know. Like I was really out of the loop in terms of like tournament stuff. Well, like people that were active in tournaments. I don't know. This whole time is just kind of like I just didn't know what was going on. So all of a sudden, when I got back into like Course Ace, these guys started like showing up in my feed. How'd you even find them?
Me?
Okay. Yeah,
Oh, I found them through Clover Cup.
because
And then yeah, so I found them through Clover Cup initially.
mhm,
And then I knew Fleslin prior to the vast majority of my staffing because I met him like mid to late 2020.
mhm,
And that was before he started like graphic design and stuff. Like he would draw and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And he started kind of like dipping into graphic design after
mhm,
meeting Ali, and I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. And I saw Ali's past work and I was like, wow, she's really good. And so I decided to hire them
mhm.
for doing my Finesse Cup graphics for 2021.
Feel
But
like,
I would say a lot of it is word of mouth. Like you just have to see them.
yeah, you're just gonna have to find like the right. Um, all it is just finding the right outlet, regardless of what you do. Freelancing is mostly, sorry, being successful in freelancing is mostly about finding the right outlet, I would say.
Not only that, but you also have to find like the right people.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. That's a big thing as well. It's just like you gotta find, because communication is key. Communication is
Well, not
key.
only that, but also style. Like if you like you can't expect to get someone with a certain type of style and ask them to do something completely different, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Like if you want them, like you should expect like, oh, maybe like what I am gonna receive is probably gonna look a lot similar to what their past work is, and if you're completely okay with that, then go for it. But sometimes you have to understand that these are people that, have their own style, have their own artistic influences and whatever.
Mhm.
So that's like the most important thing. But yeah, communication is 100% key. As a tournament host, I am literally like, you can do whatever you want. Mainly because I am not very creative in terms of starting, which is why I'm a spreadsheet designer. I really have to gain inspiration from other things, but I can give critiques in terms of, oh, can you make this a different orientation? Can you add this? Can you change this color kind of thing?
Mhm.
Other than that, I'm not really hands-on in the creative process.
I'm like on the other end of where I mostly rely on the tournament hosts to give an idea, because then otherwise, uh, the hard part is like when you have nothing to base out of, um, you're just kind of stuck in creative hell for a really long time. And then that's where, like we talked about before, like the stress insight comes into play,
Mm-hmm.
where you're just like you're just like fuck it, and then like that last 30 minutes to an hour where things are actually due, you're just it I think that's like when your dopamine or your adrenaline just rises and you just don't care and you just start like crunching that
Oh,
work.
definitely.
Yeah.
Oh
There have
yeah.
been multiple occasions where I would just be super stuck on how to make something for a spreadsheet, and I literally would just I would just stare and be like, "Yeah, I have no clue." And then
Mhm.
30, 45 minutes before the host would say, "Hey, tournament's about to go up," I would get it. Um, Also, sometimes and it's much more forgiving in spreadsheets than it is on GFX,
Mhm.
and dare I say impossible on DFX. But changing your design like last minute and during the tournament, there have been multiple occasions where I have changed my cover designs over like maybe like 2 days after the sheet is out, simply because
Mhm.
I just don't like it anymore. And when I come back with a fresh new thing, it's like, wow, it actually looks a lot better. I like it a lot better.
Mhm. It's just like, man, I kind of wish, like looking at this, I kind of wish that I did tournaments in this era, because Corsace mostly Corsace is still using old client, like just regular client in terms of for like tourney stuff. But then like obviously we throw our own stuff over it, right? Like, and we like heavily skin over it. But just from my experience with having to deal with like tourney, the really early tourney clients, uh, to seeing what people can do with laser and Gosu, and even though I don't know anything about it, it looks like it's a lot more flexible in terms of what you can customize over it.
Oh yeah, for
It
sure. Ali and Fledland does such a good job.
it's flexible to an extent. Sure, you can't like get all like what we would normally do for closed or open with how we do the picking management and all the
Yeah,
additional like overlays and whatnot. You can't really get away with that,
yeah.
especially for the picking process on Laser Client. I spent a fair bit of time looking at Laser Client, like all the other possibilities that the Laser Client has
Yeah.
to like store videos, anything that loops per se. Um, and I think we kind of like discovered that both simultaneously a bit more when, of course, we were working with like OWC stuff and like playing around with it and whatnot. To the extent of laser, even though I don't know anything about Gosu, I find it a whole lot easier just to like work with the old client and then just move the separate windows and then have everything like skin over like we as we say. All right. Laser still has its limits. Is there the potential to add more code to make more of a visual impact? Sure, but I don't see that happening for like another 10,
I,
15
I,
years.
I still feel like you either way you're gonna be very limited in terms of like working if you're just solely working within the tourney client itself, right? Because it's basically at that point it's no different from making a skin, because you have your limitations within making a skin as well, like how big hit circles need to be, how big numbers have to be, all that kind of stuff. Um, and the positioning for each asset will always be in the same place, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's just no way around that. I mean that's why, like, for example, for Corsace, that's why uh, you have to find external means to kind of like push the boundaries on what you can do to like add visual appeal, right? And it's also like the fact is now we're seeing ourselves not being limited to we're seeing ourselves not being limited at all. People are using are building their own. Obviously, if you can afford it, people are building their own websites now. Corsace has a website. Perennial did a website. Um, oh, we're not seeing static graphic images now. A lot of things are using motion. Uh, Corsair's Closed was the first tournament where I did motion graphics for, and that was also very early on where I started learning how to do motion graphics, right? And then the next Corsair's Closed was when we actually push the limits of what we can do in a tournament. Because then, for example, we mentioned coding earlier, and uh, Vinxus who codes for the fact that OBS you can use like browser sourcing, we push a lot of things to code, so we don't actually have to manually update it on stream. And then with that being said, you can do a lot of crazy stuff with code, like for example, showing the map stats, all these player statistics. These are all live updated from a spreadsheet and parsed through code, right?
And then you have your whole like picking and ban schemes too.
Yeah, the picking and ban schemes. These are all through code as well.
Oh yeah, dude, Gosu, honestly, like I have used Laser, Gosu, and Cutting Edge in my tournaments. Like I personally don't do them.
Mhm.
But I have seen like what they're possible of. And in my very, very humble opinion, I think that Gosu lends itself way more towards artistic creativity and expression than Laser ever will.
Mhm.
Because you can do things like customizing the points. You can customize like who's picking. There's so much more that you can do. But with Laser you can get motion graphics and stuff like that, which is why it might lend itself towards like more of an appeal. But in my very humble opinion, Gosu is just so much better if you really want to showcase the GFX and like really make an impact on how to display your tournament.
Because I know, like right here, like for like the OWC screen that I'm showing right now, this is like stock Laser, I think.
Yeah.
Right, like this
Yeah.
is like how much more does Gosu add to this?
You can definitely, I mean, because with Gosu you can even put, oh, it's picked by this person, and you can
Right.
display the player name or the
Right.
team name. You can customize, like if you go to my Finesse Cup thing, you can customize like what the icon for the points are. So I believe for my tournament there were whole notes.
Oh yeah, I see.
And not only that, it said the match history of, oh, like red team won the first point, blue team won the second point, won the third point. So there's just so much more that you can do. There's so much more information that you can even put onto Gosu. In addition to just customizing the font. Like you're kind of stuck on the Taurus font when it comes to Laser, but as you can see, like you can customize the font that's displayed on the overlay. Like you can even have a section for commentators and all that. So in my opinion, it does lend itself more towards like the artistic value.
Yeah, something I want to add, just as like we're talking about like the actual tournament clients, and it was visible with the old one, is these clients are, they're officially developed into almost primarily to support the World Cups, and like the community usage is sort of not really considered. So it's not like the World Cups have traditionally been planned in a way that does not necessarily reference what the community is doing. They just kind of do a thing, and as a result, you have a lot of like simple stuff. Since on the marketing point, like for the production serves to attract like people, community tournaments kind of have to do that. The official tournament, it's the official tournament. So I'd say that it makes a lot of sense that Gosu being like a community-made tool for supplementing like graphics and to really like show off the power makes a lot of sense here. So.
I'm gonna like start like looking into it. I just need tournaments that will
want to push that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because all I'm doing is just like very rarely now. Actually, like most of my work is involves actually touching the tourney client. So I'm kind of like thankful for that, but at the same time, I kind of want more of an active role, I feel. But that's the thing, right? It's like now that like with like all the examples that we're seeing and like all the tournaments that we've seen over the decade or so, everything that is being pushed out, a lot of major tournaments are being pushed out, whether it be the next OWC or whether it's going to be the next Course Ace, the round table, all that kind of stuff. Everything is, all these tournaments are making a statement, and everything that we're seeing is pretty much brand new, right? Um, I think that's the one big thing where like, especially with how we're getting audience and how we're getting engagement, stream numbers are higher than ever for the tournaments. Social media presence is higher than ever. We're getting tournaments where they're being sponsored by big companies like Yuki Aim. Course Ace is also being sponsored. I don't know a lot of other tournaments, but we're getting to the point where you can't just see tournaments.
Be like a sole proprietor of itself.
Yeah, like how like Smash tournaments like were back then, right? Like now we're seeing like OC tournaments more like in the same light as esports, I guess. I think that's a good thing, even though, but it does put a lot more work onto the people who are involved in it, for sure. Is there anything else to add?
No, not necessarily for me
No.
anyway.
No, I
I
think
think
we're
we've
gonna.
covered graphics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I guess-
well, I think we're gonna like cover some of my stuff as well, because
Yeah,
I've
go
talked a
for
little
it.
bit about like what it is to be like a graphic designer. But when you're like one thing to consider if like you're for anyone that is looking to become one in the scene, uh you got to be
Expect to work for free.
yeah, you got to be mentally prepared for it as well, because again, a lot of the work is underpaid or not paid at all, and that's how I
Yeah.
started up, just like living off scraps and free bread. But graphics for any tournament that has graphics to begin with is literally, regardless if it's like small or big, it's literally the bread and butter for to like the tournament itself. It's suffering. It's You have to be constantly on call. So the thing is, like, you can make a good portion of graphics, like the stream overlay, the social media forum posts, all that kind of stuff ahead of time. But you still have to be on time to push stuff like uh I guess if your social, for example, if your social media posts have like, oh, grand finals, grand final stream coming up in whatever time featuring these players, you won't know those results until like they actually happen. So you can't really do that much ahead of time, right? Like there's still a big portion of what you do that has to be like kind of in the moment kind of thing, and that's been
Like
it,
banners, main menu banners, if they qualify. That
yeah.
has to be done like on the spot.
Yeah, and then like last minute changes, like let's say if there's like technical difficulties on stream, and then it's like something you can do, some information that needs to be changed, all that kind of stuff. You kind of have to be available at all times, unfortunately as it is. And I find myself constantly like rushing home just to to get something that that needs to be fixed, or like I'll be like messaging and it's bad, but I'll be messaging like while I'm driving to make sure like things are not on fire, right? So if you have assistants, if you have more than one person in the design team of your tournament, definitely make use of them. If you don't have anyone available, then well, they're
You
just
gotta
gonna,
wait.
yeah, you'll have to. It's best to like make a backup for if that ever happens. Um, but other than that, like yeah, they're pretty much gonna have to like leave it as it is,
Or if
or
you don't, no. Okay, I have something to say about Acid
yeah,
because I have worked with. I have at one point in time, I kind of did have like worked with someone who were it was like more than one person, but or I've seen people I've admined. Like I wasn't the main host, but I've admin and I like kind of I have access to all the channels and I see how they operate. The only issue where you are like an asset designer or you are like a subliminary designer and not like the person who created the main GFX, you have to draw a clear line of power and a clear line of what or a designation of tasks essentially, just so that they don't step on each other's toes. And in my opinion, from what I've seen, like I remember seeing this one GFX artist who essentially had a whole meltdown because like they were very very busy and could not communicate properly about something that was supposed to about the badge or something. And so the host and the admins kind of came into agreement like, oh, what if we asked the subliminary designer who helped make other like maybe not the main banners but the other stuff, and they kind of had like, oh, like this is my work, like um I like why were you just like brushing me off to the side kind of thing. And it's kind of like a do or die kind of not do or die, but it's a very like stress of the moment, like knee jerk reaction thing, which is like if you're working with more than one person, you have like get that clear line of power.
yeah, yeah. You have to be on like neutral grounds about everything, and like um, and I'm bad for that myself, where like I'll have people, and there's aside from me being like the lead design in Corsairs, there's a lot of other like assistants and like smaller helpers that prioritize with design as well. And you know, we would bring these people on board, and they're like, "What do I do?" I'm like, "I'll figure it out. I'll give you a task later," and I just kind of like leave them hanging because I don't know what to prioritize, and I'm always like really occupied myself. But definitely make sure that you have that clear line of power, and make sure that you delegate your tasks appropriately as well, so that your tournament doesn't catch on fire. You're always going to have a backup plan, all that kind of stuff. um the big thing right now as well with design, especially if you have like collaborators, other people working on design. um so one thing is that if you're just starting out as a designer, and I see a lot of, and here's my gripe. Here's my one big gripe about what I see on Osu and a lot of other places on the internet. But people who just learn how to use Photoshop, for example, and say I'm a graphic designer, right? It's no different from people who, like for example, get a car jack, and suddenly say I'm a mechanic and they work out a garage. If you're gonna go do graphic design for a tournament, or if you're just gonna do graphic design on a professional level and a semi-professional level, and you want to take it seriously, learn theory, learn design theory, learn composition theory, color theory, all that kind of stuff. Because then it doesn't matter what you use at that point. It doesn't matter if you're using Photoshop, if you're using Illustrator. If you understand theory, nothing's gonna look bad for the most part, right? Um, Otherwise, you know, a lot of a lot of what you're going to be making is going to be that stock Osu design that we've mentioned before. Um, I'm not going to say that that's the case for everyone, but that's going to be the case for most. That being said, again, it doesn't matter what you use, but a lot of people are starting to, and I got forced into it, but a lot of people are starting to use Figma, because I'll show here. Figma is, for those who don't know, it's a web program that where you can. It's essentially a vector-based web program, kind of like Illustrator, but it's more catered towards web developers, UI UX designers, in making wireframes and prototypes and whatnot for web pages and mobile apps. But there's also like a collaborative aspect of it, like Google Docs. So I could like invite, I don't know, all these guys hop in and they can do whatever. They can edit text, they can draw circles and whatnot. Um, so if you have like more than one designer, uh, this will, albeit, yeah, there are limitations on what you can do. Um, it's not Photoshop, but you can. This will kind of like make the process a little bit more streamlined. And like what you're seeing here is actually the entire thing for Full Circle, and the majority of this stuff, like probably all this stuff here, like I didn't make. It was all conceived by Chile Repair, but I'm working on it. Like this is all like the rest of that like is all me, right? So uh there's a lot of you know, that's the thing, right? It's like, for example, if we're pushing out an episode, I'm not home to make the thumbnails. I can just get like Vinxis to go on Figma and tell him to change this text and then like export it and push it on Twitter. So I think that's what more people should be doing as well. It kind of like just saves the process. It makes the process a lot easier per se. Um, and albeit again, like time and time again, um, communication is the most important part. You gotta make sure that there's a clear understanding between you and the tournament host, everything that revolves around design. And like I do like map pool, map background sometimes as well. Um, I'm involved in the social media aspect. Uh, Pretty much almost everything in a tournament that revolves that is seen by the audience, right? So you got to make sure that all that kind of stuff is conveyed properly. And for me especially, like I'm very much out of the loop for everything. Like I don't know the map pools. I don't know uh, how the tournament format usually goes. So you got to make sure that those are all conveyed, because then all this information that you're putting out is going to be seen by the audience, and you got to make sure that that stuff is correct. Otherwise, um, you know, it's not your fault if it's incorrect, because you just put the design out there. But ideally, you don't want, like, you know, these technical difficulties to happen, right? And that's pretty much what it's like to be a graphic designer.
Basically, slave labor for passion, right? Like,
Slave labor.
that's what I got from that.
Slave labor for
Essentially.
fashion.
Yeah, all right.
Essentially,
Well, it's okay, everyone, because we have two more roles that fit
Whoa!
into that category. I think our video guy Gordon here's been a bit quiet, so he can talk
Oh.
about his passion here.
Oh, what the hell? Yeah, I don't know. Again, it's like communication with like host itself on top of, I guess, both the editors, because recently, since I'm also wrapping up my duos tournament, dynamic duos. That's been a thing since like early 2017. If we really want to like date back, it was like the first time that me, Jordan. Oh wow, the name confusion. I know, right? Me, Jordan, and I think at the time too, Scarlet Red. Were just like, let's just run a tournament for fun. So I ran like 2 duo iterations, and then I was like, let's do a 4v4 type situation, right? Back then, like, we didn't have top of the notch computers, we didn't really have streamers, so everything was just kind of like streamlined and kind of like secret, except for like all the information on our main forums and spreadsheets and whatnot, right? But now we're seeing, especially with like all the work Pishy's doing for FA showcase reveals as well, a really great amount of work and like ethic and kind of like impact for what wants to be shown at specific times. This even goes for like feature films and like stuff like that too. There's just so much like cool potential of what people can actually do. And what kind of like drew me in was essentially 2021's like show TB reveal for like RPG, because even at the time too, Pishy was just doing like standard stock like a laser implementation of the texts and all the other kind of like breaking ground features, I guess to say, that have been implemented over the time within like editor and like video additions and whatnot. What really showed me, besides like all the editing work that I've done for my past for like YouTube channels and like my own like personal works, since I work in dance, right? So you're pushing yourself to extort your body to more visual limits, but then you can actually record and edit and break down things, of course, right? That kind of like films and video are pretty much essential to everything, especially like advertising, right? You can even have advertising in your kind of like build up for a tournament to build up that hype to bring in more people if you have like that en masse following. Is a kind of like something that I would like to see with OWC or like Corsace even, right? It's just like a brief minute long highlight video where you could post it to Twitter, YouTube, like TikTok, whatever, right? Like wherever your main following may be, right? That's the kind of the thing with social media, is that everything is just like so far from each other that you need to kind of like collectively scoop in all together and formulate into one place as a whole, right? But honestly, this video here kind of showed the extent of creativity, at least for me, right? Because you're having everything that you're seeing now is kind of like filmed, and I don't even need to like go into Pishy's like background like files. Everything in this video alone was pretty much like shot on green screen for this whole intro, right? Green screen and chroma keyed in to everything, right? This is why you see everything pushing by. Is honestly a very cool feat to have, because like I don't even know where to explain this, because it's honestly a very like cool encapsulating visual to have movement, especially on for something that's just so static as the game of Osu is, right? That's kind of where storyboards, even though people don't like generally see them half the time, really just like push the boundaries of like visual impact and like can convey a mood and build hype or whatnot into certain situations, if anybody like wants to tag into, right? It's honestly very cool what like design is able to achieve, especially within color use too. This is why like color theory is such like a big impact, even in mapping too. Sure, you can like pick a background and then insert your combo colors, but you're usually like trying to complement or pull out from what the background may be, right? Um, Honestly, design is so cool. I'm kind of jealous of like people who do it Omega full time. Honestly,
It's not that fun.
I know it's not fun, but like the potential of like what you can do to give people a huge like impact per se is just like outstanding, right? Sure, acting. The one gripe I have about like this video was like the acting because there's no um kind of like script per se. You don't need to have a script, but like we're not actors, right? We can talk on end about how um we can what's the word I'm looking for? Right. um what
Compensate.
is the
Like,
not really compensate, but just like more have a more solid vision rather than just being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna record these voice lines for no substance. That's the word I'm looking for.
mhm.
Like there usually needs to be some sort of substance to kind of like push um either like the comedy or mood of a video or like film, right? Because when you're shooting like um reveal videos, you're trying to give some sort of like oh my god, this is gonna be so cool, right? Even though we can have like our little like quacking memes and whatnot, right? Um, but even overlays chemo for like going out and filming live video too, right? There's so much that you can incorporate into videos as a whole and kind of
Yeah.
like what I did in my major, which was like fine art, film, and photography, right? You still have a whole lot of like compositional know-how to build off of and kind of like give. I'm gonna keep saying impact because I'm out of words. Like there's just so much fun and potential that you can like get into establishing uh an experience for people watching, right? Even then, like the storyboard for King Atlantis alone was just so mesmerizing to even look at, and storyboarders, even though we're getting into a extent where you can begin to code and develop your own kind of situations rather than having to go in and individually make individual moments of time, like especially for things such as these extenders, right? Most of those are um individual things, but you can space them out to do like their own like little things too, right? But even then there's people that are making code like not like Ollie Bombi, but like more in tune uh storyboarders, right? That are developing programs just to make life a little bit easier. Right? You can't really get that for videos. Sure, you can have your base templates and lay things on top, but you can't necessarily like explore freedom, right? And honestly, shout out to my boy Marvin. I mentored this guy in mapping for like a little bit, but animation alone and video animation is aggravating,
I just
right?
want to say it's like like storyboarding is basically making motion graphics accessible for those that can't afford After Effects.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
And like the other thing is that like we had somebody go out and shoot real Toronto water for this.
Toronto water.
You're not gonna there's like not many opportunities where you can say that we had someone go out and shoot real Toronto water for a tournament.
Yeah, and
That's production.
Not Alberta water, just
Not
so
just
just
Toronto
so we're
water.
clear.
yeah,
It's
thank
Toronto
God.
water.
Thank God. Yeah, it's just you have the baseline of like what you can create, of course, and then you have like you can go as crazy or as basic as you want, right? Frankly, too, like I can go into uh, anyway, yeah, we won't talk about that, right? Even in stuff like this too, like for mapping contests, you're having your stock graphics, right? This is like some stock like stinger that I found because I was like too lazy to make my own kind of thing. But it kind of it worked the way that I wanted it to, right? Being sure that I'd have zero sound, but you can have these basic things where you just run through your either record it through OBS or run through Dancer to get like the best possible like kind of layout that you can get. But then it's just up to you on how you wanted to give your transitions, and like this was like baseline and like very super simple, and this was like back in 2021, and I didn't really like fully care for how the visual was portrayed because people want like quick snappy videos, and like you kind of see these things especially in not to take the hit on pool showcases, but pool showcases can go on for like a dreadful a dreadful amount of time, which is where you get I hope I have this stuff right. You get stuff. Oh, where's the sound? Oopsies. All right, you get very short form like 11, 20, like 10 to 20-minute videos just to portray short moments of the maps that aren't fully custom, because I think when you get to like fully custom maps you want to like show everything start to end just so a player can expect what to see in a map, right? Essentially like their own like visual test play of the map, being like, oh man, is this gonna work and whatnot, right? Especially all these replays are just Dancer loaded out. Thank you to mainly Squink is in charge of like making these videos, and I'm just like hounding test players to like get their test plays in on time and in a good manner, and then me and Squink would like work hours and not having like Gosu or any kind of like predetermined code to fetch stats, so me and him are like ending up having to like put in every individual like stat line, right? Which isn't like the best thing to do, as there's more like streamlined ways of doing it via Figma or like any other code to help like unload what the graphic needs to be seen.
So
right, then you can just have your like your base.
If anybody is going to do this, use Figma and have a sheet plugin. Now you can just pull everything off a sheet.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
'Cause
sir.
this was for me doing this for multiple generations of Corsace.
Aggravating.
It hurts.
It took years off your life.
Yeah,
Life
like,
expectancy
I
is now
aged,
down
like-
to like 60.
I aged 10 years just from doing
Yeah.
like fucking showcase graphics, and then you gotta do the same graphics for like the actual tournament. You gotta punch in like the same stats like 50 times in a whole tournament.
Yeah, and then especially for things like Corsairs 2, you don't know what the actual outcome of the star rating is even going to be, because there's still discrepancies between stable and laser like submissions, especially like with the new SR um, plugins and whatnot with the current upload status of the website of Osu. Right there, you can be close, but you're never gonna be like fully accurate until it's uploaded. It's kind of sad, but what are you to really do?
Yeah,
Right.
it is what it is. At that point, it's like there's only a lot of things that are within your own control.
Right, and you're doing these things, and I have we didn't, like, especially for my tournament, we didn't go through everything, but we got up to quarters and was like, viewership is low, and we're not going to even like bother with anything until we like get to grands, which is like what we're currently working on. Right, but punching in individual things, especially when you get into like full pools, is just so painstaking when you have to do 20 plus or like 15 plus maps and then have to factor in for like what, five, six, maybe like even 10 different factors, like difficulty names and song names and all the 7 stat lines that a person
The
needs to see.
the
Like, it
character lengths.
character lengths, you get so stuck, especially I think like here in quarters, right? You get uber long names that you can't like end up fitting fully like into your thing, so you end up like stuck doing dots or like
Or like you compress the text, but it's like
it's
not
it's
legible.
it's not legible, it's not consistent. You just end up having to like move things around. Like, even then, like with things like this, right? This little portion of the song edit was meant to be within like the song title, right? There's not really much you can do in the likes of trying to fit everything unless you have enough space to keep your character limits and your everything that you need. Even then, like, this remix is supposed to be in the song title tag, right? It's
You
you
gotta,
get
yeah. It's like you
you
gotta make
gotta
compromises to, like, if you're trying to like match up with the original like metadata.
yeah. And honestly, that's gonna be a very hard thing to like even fit in half the time. Right, metadata. Metadata.
Don't
Trigger
talk to me
word.
about metadata.
Oh, the happy
Don't bring that
metadata
up.
incident.
Don't bring
Sorry,
that up.
I'm not trying to bring it up, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just you get heavy limitations in like what you can do, but even then it's just how you want to end up portraying everything in the end, which is why I'm kind of like pushing more towards the more of like what you can do in a storyboard, right? Sure, you want to have something that's like quick and concise for most things nowadays, because people's attention spans now more than ever have been steadily like decreasing, where people just want quick and concise information. That kind of just goes for me too, because I hate having people be like coming from like a design perspective as well as just like a social interaction. It's like you get like, hey, I have a question, and then you have to wait like another 10 minutes for the person to actually like format and ask their question. This is like so aggravating just to not get like, this is what I'm looking
How to
for,
ask
and
questions? Don't start with, "Hey, can I ask you a
ask you a
question?"
question. Yeah. Be like, especially with me, you have to be like upfront of what you want and when you want it. Otherwise, I'll be like, oh man, I gotta pull and um drag out information. It's like, especially like with kids to parents, especially like at people in their adolescence, right? It's like, how's your day going? You're like, yeah, it was okay, right? It you just don't get a whole like full scope rather than just be like, what's on your mind, or like what's bugging you, right? It's just like you need to have, and honestly, with us three, us four, even, is just like communication, 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 and from there, anything can be really plausible. Frankly,
Even
a
if
lot of
life happens, like you should tell us.
yeah,
Oh, or you should tell you like at least try to be like, hey, I haven't been active for the past like couple days. You know, this happened. Even if you can't tell us in the moment, you can always just be like, hey, I wasn't active for the past like 4 or 5 days because of like X reason or Y reason. Like life happens to the best of us, you know. Yes, you can. Yes, you should still communicate that to an extent, but you don't have to tell us in the moment. And and this is a very very strong take, but anyone who disagrees really should take a hard look at themselves and be like, okay, if you're holding people to this standard, then you have to hold yourself to that standard too.
Yeah.
and I really can't say much about like my experience because it really just involves more people, and I don't think I have like sure I have like the liability to show these videos, but like I think on a like YouTube scale anyway, and just like to keep the sake of like people's faces and names like safe, I'm not going to, right? Because I do a whole lot more like dance video edits and film, right? And you're not gonna find that underneath like my Gordon alias, right? That's gonna take like a whole lot more digging to find who I am and like what I do, right? My extent has not been like fully pushed in a Osu setting because I have to do everything that I do in my real life like work, right? Um, which is why you get to see more people like uh Vinxus or like Chemo or K or K2 like doing more not necessarily like video related topics, but
Or
more
like visual exposure.
visual exposure.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of my stuff is just like hidden in the background, especially for like those earlier forms of Full Circle, which was just like, hey, can you go and ninja the the OWC VODs and just like cut them down for these specific moments, right? That's your like as simple baseline of work essentially like that I've been given, right? I haven't sure I have my portfolios and whatnot, but it hasn't really like been discussed or like been seen anywhere except for like colleges and universities, and even then I hate that work I've done now because it's just there's so much more that's been like developed over time, and that's the only way that people really improve in the sake of like anything in life, right? Is just like by doing it and taking the time and doing the time.
You just gotta find, again, you just gotta find the right outlet that like can allow you to kind of expand on your skill set as well.
Right? And especially like if anything that you really want to do, right? Um, not sure. Like, I'm trying to do more and like talk with Pishy more about like doing more FA like related showcasing and stuff, right? But being like part of internal and all the whole like featured artist Redux stuff and like all that. Um yeah, it's cool to like begin to ponder the possibilities of like new upcoming like FAs and whatnot, and seeing like the possibilities of what you want to do to showcase that kind of thing, like especially through even all the COE or like whatever like Pishy does to like go off somewhere and then record it. Right? We had like what 2, 3 um FA showcases that just were recorded at COE in 2022. Right? It was pseudo like surreal in a way, as well as just like having that opportunity to even like watch him make that kind of stuff too, right? It it kind of just really depends on like the path you want to take, right? You can be hype, or you can do like base entry level, like slap the graphics, slap whatever you need, and then just like ship it out.
Windows
Right.
Media Maker.
Windows Media Maker, yep. Windows Movie Maker. Um,
Shot on
Right.
recorded on Hypercam.
Bandicam.com.
Unregistered Hypercam 2.
Right. Heck, like there's a lot they can do, right? You don't even need to have like the top end like software nowadays to like really push anything. Like you can still get away with like a whole lot of editing and whatnot, even in GIMP or like Paint, right? I've seen some pretty amazing things in school alone that's been made on Paint or like GIMP, right? Even though we had like full access to the whole Adobe suite for essentially like tuition, right? Stuff was crazy, right? Like you don't need the best software. You just need to have like the best like knowledge in what your software can pull off, right? Whether it be like Avidmux or like Dancer OBS. There's so much untapped potential of like what one can do and what the software can do, especially if it's like open source and you can begin to like develop your own kind of means into trying to get something that you're not fully getting from the base product, right? OBS is just like OBS is even open source, right? So you can always like edit and change and give people your new like, oh, like, hey, look what I can do. I can like add this overlay with like the flick of my wrist. Like I don't know. Like I could,
You're a wizard, Gordon.
you're a wizard. Like some like neural technology that'd be like change scene, right?
The
Or like
stuff with like the Stream Deck as well.
uh magic.
yeah,
Honestly,
yeah.
magic.
Like
Unfortunately, like we don't have
5,000
Cavo
bajillion dollars to
dollars
spare.
or that too. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Like Cabo was like the big thing where it's like he kind of like allowed me to push what we can do with the stream production, because like that thing just does, paired with like the code as well, like that
Yeah.
thing just like you press a button and like a bajillion macros just fire at once, and then like it I wouldn't be able to think of like all that kind of. It's really hard for me, like especially now, like without like without having a stream deck and without having Cabo to tell me like what we can and cannot do. I feel like I don't know, or I feel like I'm very limited in what I can do in like a regular tournament. Like I feel so brain dead.
You're
now.
telling me. You're telling me.
Truth. Right.
Wow.
I feel so brain dead half the time.
You're telling me, dude. I host. Look,
Yeah.
by no means is staffing, even just for one role, relatively easy, but doing multiple at once across multiple tournaments, oh my god.
Yeah, it sounds like all of these facets of production really cause some serious brain rot. It sounds like we more or less covered the video and the graphics art, all the flashy wow cool wow stuff. It's like wow, there's a lot of work there. But then there's like some stuff that is you actually just you see it, but you know it when you see it, but also it's not meant for necessarily visual appeal a lot of the time,
You know
with
when you
some
see it?
exceptions.
When you
Yeah,
see
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, anyways, I think
Central
Bracket
Time?
K can tell us all about things like that, especially spreadsheets. That's a big one, spreadsheets. That does have a visual component actually, but I'll let her
Yeah,
talk about that.
so basically, um, I kind of exploded onto the scene only as a referee, but I started getting into tournaments, sheet designs, and just tournaments in general, mainly because of my own tournament. So I actually started late 2020, and in my opinion, looking at other spreadsheets and kind of just searching through, spreadsheets were mainly just random layouts and squares and stuff like that, and you're quite literally just you're literally just doing, oh, I'm just gonna change the colors and maybe change a couple of things, like change the names, like random, add lines here and there. And that was the case for my first tournament, Bracket K's Bracket. And it was quite literally just squares, rectangles, fill in information, change the colors. And the only thing that I did differently was change the layout. And that was just the only thing I could do. And I could probably show a lot of my quote unquote timeline. But yeah, like I would say, yeah, so BKB happened I want to say March 2021. So it's been about 2 years since I really took a dive into an attempt to spreadsheeting, and spreadsheeting is a learning process just like anything else, and it just comes with experience. If K2 could stream my, or can I stream my screen? K2.
Yeah,
Only
you're
you
on.
can see. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're on the stream, but
you're on
you
Oh, okay,
screen.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's like not doing, it's not showing up for me. Oh, strange. But anyways,
3 minute delay.
yeah, so it started with Bracket K's Bracket. It was literally just, I put schedules on one side, I do links on another side, and in my head, back when I made this, wow, this is really nice. You know, it's not the typical I shove the banner in the top left corner and I do everything else later. And I'll get back to this, so remember this comment. But I thought it was pretty cool, and I was like, wow, this is nice, like a little window, the banner is nice and front and center, and it's literally just carrying that color scheme throughout the thing, and layouts are fairly bare. Late summer of 2021, Yuki Aim happened, and I was brought on to help organize and sheet for that. So that's exactly what I did. And it was mainly more overlay experimentation and changing the colors and stuff like that. There was really no design thing other than like very small accents. So the cover was this, and there were no staff, like blah 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 blah. I decided to omit them, and it was very bare. And I didn't really like this design, but it was mainly just using line work and less color, because if I had included colors, it would have been overwhelming. And that's basically the timeline for that. K's Finesse Cup 2021, which was winter of that year, that's when I really started going into actual design, like actually just exploring with covers, because I had the bright idea. Remember those late night epiphanies? That the piano on the right side was essentially one of those late night epiphanies to add to the music theme. And I put the schedule there because it just fit so perfectly. And then on the left side, I basically included the music staff, so it's 4 spaces and 5 lines. And I tried to make it look like that, and I kind of kept with that color scheme. And it's all based on the fact that Ali and Fleslin made that whole music theme. Like they put the time signature and like the clef and all those stuff. And I could have done more, but at the time my creativeness was not fully developed. So I couldn't find a conceivable way to really accentuate that. And if I had to go redesign this, which if I'm being real honest, I might, just for funsies on a different separate sheet, but it still stuck to the main, basic colors, like kind of bland, lots of rectangles, and that's that. Come 2022, that's really when things started taking off in terms of design, and I made the Konyo Cup spreadsheet. And prior to this, no one was really doing what I was doing. Like, I didn't see slants anywhere on any spreadsheet before I started doing Konyo Cup, and recently, I guess other spreadsheeters have taken note, and they're doing this too, or they're designing their own and even then, 2021, I didn't really see a lot of designs or even just layouts. It was, dare I say, like even even matching the colors wasn't like a thing. It was very just bare bones. Like you might just change the color of the box, but no one was really doing anything outside of that. So, Hanyo Cup 3 was when I decided to just completely do something out of the ordinary and really try to do something out of the box and accentuate the GFX. And and the hardest part about this was getting all 4 quadrants completely even. And this is probably my I broke the glass ceiling moment. And it took over a year to get to this point. So I'm quite happy with what I did. But I actually found the slants completely by accident. I had I'd wanted to like change the orientation of a text, and so the lines had moved with it, and it's kind of sparked the idea, and I put it on the back burner, and I used it later for this, and the rest is history. But this was pretty much when I was like, covers, this is how I'm gonna do them. This is how I'm gonna do my covers, and that really was the starting point of me really getting into design and really getting into the front end of the deal. And of course, I carried it through when I made the team list, and I tried to, not be boring, but it's really hard not to because you have to take into consideration, I still have to give information. I still have to make it readable, and that's the hardest thing. Until Yaz's Summer Cup 2022. This was hell on earth, for lack of a better phrase. It is very hard making pixel art in general. So to replicate that on a spreadsheet is even harder. And I obviously, like, Chillier made the GFX, and I had to really think very, very hard of how do I do pixel art on Google Sheets? Like, how do I make this like really game themed? And so I scrolled through Pinterest, and if I'm being real honest, Pinterest is probably your best friend in these situations. And like I got the idea for the coins, and I spent a long time experimenting on just the coins, mainly because I wanted to make sure that they looked good and that they were correct. And then I kind of experimented with a beach theme of like the sand and the colors, and utilizing all of the colors that I could for like the rainbow and like the sky. I wanted to be very, very ambitious and try to make the crab, like the pixel crabs in spreadsheets, but I decided against it.
Good luck.
And yeah, but I carried that sort of game theme all through. This is where I really started to try and push beyond the cover and really stem into like the players. So the players had like the coin theme with the signups, and I still kept like the 3 bars to show like the progression of the GFX colors. I did the same thing with the map where I tried to separate them into cells like you would in a video game menu. And I still kept this like coin theme with the schedules as well. The schedules was unironically probably the hardest part because I made them block themed, almost like they're buttons, and then like like you could push them or you could select them. And combining that with the coins and getting all the proportions right was probably one of the hardest things I had to do. But it worked out in the end, which is all that matters. And this font in particular is really hard to work with because it's very large, and sometimes things don't always line up. But that's your job as a spreadsheeter. You just have to make things look okay. After that, I just kind of fell into a slump. NAT 2022 and later NADT. This was the year that I took over as host for both of these tournaments, and EML did a really, really good job with this GFX. Like, however, I didn't understand, like, after coming off of Conjo Cup, I had this really bad like block of, oh, how do I do this? I have more ideas now after what I've learned over time, but I didn't really have a solid idea. And my first draft looked absolutely awful. It was very, very basic. And later I tried to experiment with some things, which I think worked. I would, if I had to remake this sheet, I probably wouldn't, and I would definitely bring a lot of ideas, but this whole like bar idea just to fill space with accents, like that came pretty like late into my design process, and I tried to carry it throughout with the bars on the side and especially with the schedule. But that's really about it. The hardest thing actually was carrying it over to its sister tournament, NADT, so this is North American Duo Tournament. And simple does not always mean easy. I'm just gonna put it out there. Like, this goes for anything. Simple does not mean easy. And because NADT was basically piggybacking off of NAT's graphics in terms of design, and because they're sister tournaments, it's hard to streamline the two together. And it was hard for me to streamline the two together. And that's essentially what I tried to do. I like use the same font, use similar colors. And team list, like, this is where I started like really pushing what I did. Like, this is where I really, really started pushing what I did, because I essentially kind of derailed from the initial GFX, and I really tried to take elements from NAT and what I did and incorporating them into NADT, and that kind of carried throughout. So I came up with this like almost like temple design from the NADT things with like the lines. So if you go back to the cover, we had this like the four corners essentially of the lines, and that struck my fancy, and I tried to do something with it. So it kind of carried on through the schedules. And if I'm being honest, the hardest part was trying to get the proportions right and making sure it didn't look too off. But I really like this because it for like one of my personal favorites, just because it's not super extravagant, but it's still nice to look at. And that's essentially what you should do with tournament designs. Like, they should still be nice to look at while conveying the information like it should. After that, I did Xylus's Solo Speed Showdown. Now, this is the tournament that definitely opened a lot of doors, because if we go to the cover, this was a basic cover mainly because I didn't feel very confident that I could do it, but later I got more ideas and I didn't bother to make the cover, remake the cover. I could have, and I probably should have, but you know, hindsight is 2020. What I later did is that I introduced like not text art, but just experimenting with how text can affect the look of the sheets and really accent them. And so that's exactly what I did. And I did that with like the arrows to exemplify, oh, it's like speed, like fast, like blah, 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 blah. And it showed in the main portion of the GFX. And that kind of carried, especially through the schedule and the map pool, because I just kind of use them as separators, and it was still visually appealing. The hardest part of course, is getting the proportions right, because at least with text, when you align them, it is very, very hard to make sure that they look exactly the same, just reflected over the mirror, which is, in the schedule's case, the score. Not only that, but I had to figure out, okay, what colors am I going to use to differentiate winner's bracket versus loser's bracket versus potentials. And like I've been kind of reiterating this entire thing, it's all about getting information across while still be visually appealing. And that's what I did for the map pool as well. Luckily for me, this was a tournament that had I only had to use 3 colors because there was a no mod pool and there was a double time pool and the tiebreaker. So it was not a normal pool in any sense. So that's the only reason why I had a very, very good time. Following that, I basically reused a design. That same summer, I did Maple Cup, which is, for you guys that don't know, it's a Canada only tournament. I was given very, very simple GFX. They're still really good to look at, and simple does not mean easy. I think this is very clean, and if I'm being really honest, I really like this GFX because of that. It's still aesthetic, even though it's not exactly the most complex design in the world. But as a spreadsheeter, it's very hard because it's like, I only have 2 colors to work with. What do I do? And that's where your style comes into play, and that's where you really have to go above and beyond and just be like, what can I do? This is where you're given the playing field of, I can essentially do whatever I want. I can make shapes, I can do a different layout, and I essentially went with banners, and they're kind of like falling, so if you see above the bar, they're like banners, and each link is its own thing. And so I carried that throughout the throughout the tournament sheet, and that was like kind of the theme for the rest of the tournament, because other designs that I had in mind would make the sheet look way too basic. And so I really like the design, especially with what I did with the player list, because it's, it's like to I can only akin it to when you think of castles, they have huge banners draping down from the ceilings, and that's what I tried to make it look like. I reused this design later in Korean Suiji tournament, or Korean Community Suiji Cup. Okay. And this is the first tournament I did that was not in English. But I really liked it, and I really liked it. And it was in my opinion, it was a better fit because the Korean flag contains like red, blue, and white, and also the stripes on the flag. So it was a perfect opportunity for me to reuse this concept. Mainly because I mean, I am Korean, and also like I know the history of my country and whatnot.
We had to, like, this was one of those where we had to change the entire design of the tournament just because it
Oh
wouldn't.
yeah, this is true. That's true.
Yeah.
So not to be mean, but when I was stuck in a slump, and I messaged K2 about it because I was running through a lot of designs of this banner concept because I felt like that was the only thing that I could do for this. And he's like, "Oh, you know what? Why don't you try it?" So he completely remade the banner, did something completely different, and I was essentially able to piggyback off of that and made this, which really worked. So thank you for that. The initial design wasn't bad. It was just, I just couldn't make it really awesome. Like, I couldn't sheet accordingly, mainly because of spacing, and also the colors were really hard to replicate on Google Sheets to make it like very not not a flashbang. And K2 was like, "Yeah, I have a couple ideas. Let me try this." And so he did that and piggybacked. And then I carried out that banner theme for the team names. I reuse this design fairly often for my draft tournaments. So, when I did the Korean Suiji Cup, I was able to incorporate a lot of elements from the Korean flag, and that's what happened here. Same thing goes for the map pool and schedule, this whole banner concept, and like utilizing the stripes on the Korean flag, which is I'm very happy, and especially because the font itself is a lot more regal than what you might commonly see compared to like the Maple Cup sheet, which had a very aggressive font style. So it's kind of like opposite ends of the same spectrum. We go to ADS, which is America's Draft Showdown, which is happening right now, by the way.
Whoa!
Yeah, crazy. But this tournament was strong, bold gradients. And these GFX are really nice. So having to find gradients is awful. It is so time consuming, and then you have to split the cells to make sure that the colors mesh together, and then you have to, make sure that it looks nice, and it was very hard, and I think I was able to do it pretty okay with the gradient while still incorporating like the white and the black parts just to have a little bit of contrast. And I think the part that probably makes it look the best is the team list, because I essentially took inspiration from the live, laugh, love sunset gradient vibe, tapestry things. And that's kind of what I did, just so that it could be okay. And same thing for the group info. It's really hard to constantly incorporate the same thing over and over again without it being boring. So you do have to switch it up while also keeping consistency, which is, in my opinion, the hardest part. But that's it for that one. Another sheet that I did that I really want to show was the round table. The round table was one of the sheets that I did a spreadsheet design. I sped ran this in like 2 hours. Like not even 2 hours. And I remade it like once, and I probably will remake it again. I just haven't had time, but this was hard because it was the first time that I revisited slants since Kanyo Cup. I hadn't used slants after Kanyo Cup, mainly because I just didn't know how to incorporate them in all of my tournaments. And in my very humble opinion, like, you should only use them if the tournament allows it, like the tournament GFX allows it, or else it's just so extra. It's like almost too extra. And this was a different style of GFX than I was doing previously, and so it kind of helped push me to the same next level. There's a lot of empty space and not a lot of color. So number one, my thought process was I can't use an extreme amount of color. I can't explode it. Like, I have to use a black background, and everything that I do essentially has to be like a very hard, very like lack of fill, lots of lines, and lots of like text fill. And that's exactly what I did. I tried to incorporate slants, like on the banner, and I used a lot of the gold and a lot of the red, but the red was pretty bright, so I had to dial it back. So I mainly used white and silver, which are, the most common accent colors after red. When I got to the map pool and the spread and the schedules, that's when things kind of started taking off. So if we go to the map pools, I opted to incorporate color just to distinguish the map mods, but I only highlighted the IDs. Mainly because I feel like, other than that, it would have just been way too much color. And I had this really bright idea to incorporate Morse code. And it was literally just because of this, like the 4 dots that you see. And that's where I started incorporating more line work. And I'm honestly quite happy with where I landed up on the spectrum, because I obviously can't do this now, but when you have it all collapsed, it looks nice. And it shouldn't just look good when you have it all spread out. It should also look good when it's collapsed, like while information is still not being finalized. So grand final schedules, or like finals map pool, stuff like that, it should still look good without that information being there. And that was the hardest part, and I had a lot of space to fill, so I had the bright idea to incorporate Morse code. And same thing goes for the schedules. The hardest part, so this is it's like last chance bracket, like top 3, top 6. And because map pools are the opposite of schedules, you have to find a design that does both. It has to look good while it's big, and it has to look good while it's small, because typically pools increase in size as you go on the tournament, and the number of matches decrease as you move on in the tournament. So you have to find a style and a design that works both in both directions. So, and that's exactly what I did here. It's a lot more low-key, but it still works. And yeah, that's it for the round table. It's probably one of my happier designs. It's something a little bit different. I took a lot of points from my NADT sheet and incorporated the same amount of thought process that I did. And now we go to my tournament that's happening right now, which is Case Finesse Cup 2023, which just concluded registrations, and I'm just waiting for screening. But
Let's go.
Let's go! okay, too. Okay, I want everyone to know this, because you look at the roundtable and this is very like in your face, GFX. While this is a lot more
Subtle.
subtle. It's a lot more subtle. So that's like the type of thing that you have to do. You have to be adaptive to your situation and to the GFX, because you don't know what you're gonna get, and you have to be able to like just do the best that you can. And as you can see over how many spreadsheets I've shown so far, I've gone through a lot of styles, a lot of different GFX, and you just have to do the best that you can. You have to be able to.
Hello?
I think you just got cut off.
Oh, Elimio.
Hello?
Yeah, I
Hello.
think you just got cut off.
Am I
Welcome
back?
back.
Oh, I don't know what happened. Anyways, yeah. Sorry, what did I cut off at?
You got to be adaptive. You just have to.
Oh, so you have to be adaptive, and you have to be able to understand how to basically bring something new to the table, and that's what I've been trying to do. If anything, layouts remain pretty consistent throughout my time, and it's all about moving information around to where you need it.
I think like throughout this whole journey as well, it's like you're also learning design in the background as you're trying to learn your GFX, learn your tournaments GFX as well, as you're trying to adapt them into like a sheet format, but also
Yeah, so it was hard. It was hard. I think I look at other tournament spreadsheets sometimes, and other people send me tournament spreadsheets, and they're like, "Oh, what do you think of this design?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's fine." The issue is that like I don't. It's like GFX artists, right? I think that certain cheaters have a different style than I do. Or they get much easier prompts. I feel like stuff like this, like with K's Finesse Cup, it's very hard to just kind of come up with what you see on the screen, in my very humble opinion. Whereas if you get something that has a lot of hard cut shapes, or a very solid idea of, I can make this in Google Sheets, like I know exactly what to do, it's significantly easier for you to piggyback off of it, rather than something that's a lot more subtle, a little bit more complex like this, with like the clouds and like the tree branches. You can't replicate that in Google Sheets, and in my opinion, like that's where your creative ability comes into play, and that's where you have to really show off your skills. Like how I came up with this design is, yes, of course you take pointers from the GFX, but where you see the links, that was basically inspired by blocks of wood and also samurai armor. And you would never think that, right? But I went on Pinterest for like 4 hours, and I was like, this is it. And you have that light bulb go off, and I'm like, I want to do this. And then you just adjust accordingly.
that's
Should we base what this concept was off of?
Oh yes. So
Yes.
K2, would you like to tell the audience? Would you like to tell the class what we based the KFC design off of?
This was me doom scrolling on Instagram at work and finding a bottle of Johnny Walker's Blue Label limited edition Year of the Rabbit edition, or whatever.
Yo, that's my scotch. Holy
Yeah.
shit.
Like just the Lunar New Year edition of like Johnny Walker Blue Label. And then I showed Kay that, because me and Kay are avid alcoholics.
Oh,
And
Yes.
yeah,
don't disclose that information.
shh. And yeah, we just went through the whole rabbit hole of looking at those limited edition Lunar New Year whiskey bottle designs, and I think this was like the King George's edition that I took inspiration off of, because that just kind of fit better. It had this nice regal theme, as they usually do with their bottles. But the original one was like, it was like blue. It was kind of like the full circle.
it was like a royal blue.
Yeah, it's kind of like the full circle colors where you got the really bright blue and then you got the nice bright gold, but then you also had some really harsh accents of red. And I didn't really know how to work with that, so that's why I went with this, where it was like it's a little bit more subtle, a little bit more muted, per se.
Oh,
But it turned out really
but
nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it turned out really, really nice. I think because essentially this piggybacked off of the first one, which was this, and oh, hello, my mouse. My mouse is not. Hello. Oh my god, my mouse is done. Hold on. Okay.
Trackpad.
Okay, reload. Reload. Okay, reloading helps. um, but essentially, it was piggybacking off of like something a little bit more subtle, a little bit more regal, and and it was carrying off through the series, which is my tournament. It's just it became dark mode. That's what. And it was hard. It was hard coming up with the design at first, and I had to find a way to make it look pretty without overloading the sheet and putting too much. And the thing I would have to say sometimes is that less is more, and simple does not mean easy. Because I see some spreadsheets and some spreadsheeters, they get really simple GFX and they do way too much with it. Like they put so many colors or so much line work that just isn't necessary, and it kind of makes it look worse. It just looks way too busy, and that's not their own fault because they probably think it looks good and more power to them. And it's very subjective in the end. But if they're giving it a simpler prompt, I think a lot of people probably have not the best time with it, myself included. And it's hard. Like you can't let complexity determine how far you go. You can always make do with simpler stuff, and you can still make it look good.
I think you're also
So-
like kind of like for a lot of like cheaters out there, you're also like pushing the limits in terms of like what people can do with like Google Sheets, because a lot of it is pretty like, I look at like Google Sheets and I'm just like, you're just doing like I just know how to use like Sheets like a normal like spreadsheet tool for like accounting and whatnot, but like when you see that you can do this with Sheets, I wouldn't know how to start. And we always have like these back and forth conversations of like you asking me for opinion, I ask you for opinion, and it's just like there's so much limitations to like using Sheets for design that I realized through you. And I'm just like, how do you push through those boundaries, right? Like I think that's like the one thing that you've managed to accomplish. But the other thing is like,
you.
it's like why, like compared to like what's the big thing is like, what's the importance of having visually appealing sheets?
I think it's basically for me, for my which is not everyone has to agree with, but for me it's basically consistency across the tournament. Like you just see really awesome GFX and the main spreadsheet just doesn't match. To me, that is just a lack of consistency, especially if you have really good stream GFX. You should really carry that quality throughout the entire tournament in terms of anywhere that you can fit a design, you should be able to, have a good stream of, wow, I'm going to see this stuff everywhere. And it ties back to marketing. Like,
brand consistency.
go to brand consistency, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that everything needs to be exactly the same, because obviously again, like Google Sheets has limitations, but you can still make it look good. You can still make it tie into the regular theme. And basically this idea, like this cover, transformed into the team list, which was, I went and did text art of the night sky. Now, don't ask me how I got to that idea, because I don't remember. I was like, I have to fill space, and that's essentially your role as a spreadsheeter, is like, where can I take away space and where can I fill space, and it's all about these decisions that that can honestly make or break your sheet, because layout has to go like you have to go through a lot in terms of layout, but also when it comes to the amount of information you have to portray, it can be really hard. So I essentially took the idea and manipulated the backend accordingly to what I needed, and I rolled with the theme of making the board and the wood panels. And this really inspired me. I was like, wow, I really like this. It's visually appealing. Like it makes it, it forces the information forward. When you look at this, you probably don't look at the staff first, right? You look at what's highlighted, which is the links, and then you see the other stuff later. And so that's what I did. So I put all like the information that I wanted to make shine. So like this is the team list, team name, rank, who the captain is, blah 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 blah. But your attention immediately goes to the highlighted things, which are the teams and the names, and then you kind of go off that. When it comes to qualifiers, I tried to carry this theme as well, and essentially you're piggybacking off of what you've already done and just consistently doing it through, and then you just make adjustments. So for me, my adjustment was that I just changed the color of the diamonds to display that, oh, this is a different day, just for identity's sake. And that's probably what we'll be doing for this entire time. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's your art. You can display it how you wish. And after, this is the final sheet that I have to show, but this is where you go above and beyond and you just really question your existence. But going more into text art and other stuff, I sheeted for Wonderland Cup. And oh boy, this was a herald. This was a moment. And these are one of the times that GFX artists can learn just as much from spreadsheeters, because that's not what the original GFX looked like. And I was going through a lot of iterations, and I was going with a lot of different ideas, and I was like, oh, what do you think about this? And I asked K2 because it was his GFX, and he's like, oh, that gives me an idea. So he created the quilt pattern on top, and he changed some of the accents, like the confetti looking things, like he changed some of that to better fit. And I was like, wow, this is actually really cool. So I went completely on board with the quilt idea. I just exploded it more. And I made the frame. And then I made a banner outside to cover the banner, essentially. And I had the bright idea, because I really wanted to fit the bunny, because that's the icon. So I found bunny text art, and I put the schedule there. Because it's all about data manipulation and how far you can push the data manipulation. So, like, what goes to say that the schedule has to be completely aligned? Like, there's nothing that says that. You can make it cascading or whatever, because those aren't links that need to be clicked necessarily.
Literally,
And
fuck the rules, just have fun.
Yeah, exactly. And I just kind of added dots and colors accordingly, and that's essentially and the rest is history. I'm pretty proud of what I did with this, because it's definitely ambitious. But not only that, it really pushed me proportion-wise, because everything had to line up. All these dots, if even one is misaligned or out of place, like, people will notice. And so that was my job. And I had to make everything line up perfectly, which thank God it did. Like, all the dots line up, like the middle is a middle, like universal middle, for both sides and all that stuff. the hardest part was trying to incorporate the hedge, the little thing around the bunny, because the main focus is the brown, but I still wanted to have the green there as sort of an accent, so I decided to make a little hedge with the green like around only the top part of the cover. And I just kind of used it here and there, and I made the crown out of dots. And the host is Taikani, so he should be in the middle. The GFX is K2, which is also important, and that's the left. And then we're essentially the 3 points on the crown, because we are probably like the three most like forward, like when you first see the forum post, you see the host, which is Taikani. You see the GFX, which is made by K2, and then all the information that you need for the rest of the tournament is on the spreadsheet, which is me, and links and whatnot.
This was
This was a feat.
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to say like this was something that we both kind of came up on crunch time, so like those stress insights really help. But then also what is unfortunately, like again, hindsight is 2020. You really do come up with better ideas after you work through the stress insight,
Mm-hmm.
which is where the quote came from.
Yeah, so like prior things were basically I basically like had a lot. My first drafts of this, the first few drafts of this, I was just like, I don't like this. It's not as visually appealing. It's not the vision, and it's not like I don't think it fits very well. And then I came up with this. So there is a finish line. There is hope, and K2 changed it essentially after me giving him critiques. Or not me giving him critiques, but me like asking for critiques. And he's like, wait, I got you. So yeah. That's essentially what happened there. And I've omitted staff before. I have omitted like uh the amount of teams where I've moved where things are, or I've added like time in UTC. Like these are the decisions that you make that are necessary. Not necessary, but oh, I can afford to remove this, or I can afford to add this, and that's essentially part of the decision that you make. And then with the team list, I carry that theme over, and I really like the stars and whatnot, like the confetti on the cover. And so I was like, okay, I can do that. I can add that. And it was essentially a key sign for, hey, this is the team name, this is the captain, and this is the second player, and carrying that theme. Obviously, there's a lot of data manipulation that has to be involved for the backend, but that's just one of the things that, if you are only a front-end designer, you must be able to communicate, and you must be able to look at, or you must be able to make sure that the backend can do what you want. Most of the time when I sheet, I do back end and front end, so this isn't an issue, and I can easily do both, essentially. But yeah, that is basically like my spreadsheet journey. Like going from this very basic. Not to say that I still don't use this. I still do. If mainly because like there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with simple. But going from BKB back in 2021 all the way to like Case Finesse Cup, my evolution, I guess, towards becoming a better spreadsheet designer has really spoken volumes. And I'm very happy to see that other people are also taking into spreadsheet design, or they're elevating their spreadsheet designs. So yeah, that's it for my bit.
Cool. All right. Well, I think it's safe to say that we are two things are certain. One thing is we've definitely covered a lot of design aspects from various angles, including spreadsheets, graphics, and videos. And the second is apparently we're all checking into Alcoholics Anonymous because Blue Label, like Johnny Walker Blue Label, was an inspiration. So with that, any final thoughts from everyone here?
If you're starting out with design,
Learn
you have
it.
to be able to take criticism.
That too.
Yeah.
Like, well, yeah, yeah, that too, Gordon. But you have to be able to take criticism, and you have to learn, essentially, for lack of a better phrase, you have to learn how to get shit on.
You gotta have a thick skin, for a lack of better
Mhm.
words. I mean, like I think like Kay, like you yourself doesn't like you don't have a design background, so you're like that's what I'm saying. Where like you're just like learning design as you go along with the sheets, and just like kind of figuring it out. So like to every, I think for me, the biggest advice I can give is that if you're going to design, um, yeah, one, have thick skin, learn to take criticism, but also learn to know that like you're never at there's no peak. You're never ever gonna be standing at a peak, but learn to like kind of like improve yourself in a way, right? Like um this is more of a personal thing, but around the time of like Corsair's 2019 2020, I had a more behind the scenes role, I had a more subtle role in design, just because I would make like the base graphics, and then like everybody would like Chili Repair, all those guys, they would all piggyback off of them. Um, Mostly because I was like feeling really burnt out of what I was doing, and the mentality is for me was that everything had to be like my magnum opus, regardless of what people think. So even if you can take criticism or you don't care what people think, there will always be someone, um, critiquing your work, or be someone being judgmental, and that is like no one else other than yourself. And for that was like what was like bringing me down for a long time, until I was like, you know what, like I'm like, fuck it, I can't keep working like this because it's such a toxic mentality. uh and what I ended up doing, it was, and the big thing was like for me, like as a graphic designer, I felt like everything had to be like original, like fully original from myself, right? But that's the other thing. Nothing is original, right? And nothing is perfect. There will always be someone who considers their work better than yours. So you might
Oh
as
yeah,
well,
100%.
yeah, you might
Like,
as well just like fuck it. Enjoy what you do. There's like a thousand more things that you haven't
don't
discovered.
stress yourself over someone
Yeah,
else's work,
there's a
essentially.
lot of
Like,
things to learn already. So might as well just spend the time, experiment on things, discover something new for yourself, and just have fun with it. And just as long as you're Indiana's like, as long as you're satisfied with what you do, that's all that matters.
yeah, not only that, but at least with spreadsheets, like, you should be happy for the new people that are getting into it, but also kind of having a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, in the sense of like you do have experience or you do have background, and you can give, like, you have the ability to give critiques because of said experience. Like, that's like you as an individual should also realize that after doing it for like a large amount of time, then eventually gain the confidence to be like, hey, I have a portfolio of things that I've done. I can do this, like, hey, would you like to work with me, like, or shit like that. It doesn't matter, but um I also think that prompts are probably super important. Make sure you're getting prompts that you can actually work with and that you can enjoy. Like I said earlier with spreadsheets, sometimes you don't always get the easiest prompt, but you have to make do. And sometimes people get easier work than you do, and sometimes people like you can look at someone and be like, oh, I could totally have this idea, but you weren't the one to work on it, and that just means that they can do good work just like you can. But that doesn't mean that it's also like going back to style. Just because someone does a different style than you does not necessarily make them better than you.
It's also like don't be afraid to like do well, obviously, like, there's like plagiarism and whatnot, but like uh don't be afraid to like take inspiration, right? Don't be afraid to like, because like if you look at like the early OSU designs, and time again I keep referring to like the stock OSU design. A lot of them all look really similar to each other, and eventually that's just gonna be the way it is. Everything's gonna like blend into one, and you won't be able to tell things apart from another, because nothing is really original. uh, but whilst that's the case, like it's not what you haven't done yet, or it's something that you haven't done yet, so you might as well just take inspiration, play around with it, adapt to it, and then that's just more things for you to learn, for you to like put in your own arsenal, your own knowledge of things. I don't
I
know,
don't know.
Gord.
Maybe I should post more of my spreadsheets on, like, because sometimes I do see spreadsheet designs on, like, online, or posted on people's profiles or whatever. Like, hey, I'm really proud of that, and I think you have a right to be proud of it.
Spreadsheet
If
showcase.
Huh?
Spreadsheet. So.
Oh my God, spreadsheets showcase.
And for
Spreadsheet
number one, we
showcase.
have.
Next full circle podcast, we have a GFX showcase where we just critique and we just like we just look
We
at different.
roast
You know
your
how they have skinning
designs.
contests. You know how they have skinning contests. We just look at forum GFX, and then after forum GFX, we look at their spreadsheets. Also, sometimes it is a popularity contest, or if you just have a larger audience, but that doesn't discount the work that you do.
Yeah.
I
I
wouldn't say
don't.
it like for example, like K2 makes splendid GFX. Like he's on the World Cup. He got scouted by the World Cup team. Like he does their does official stuff for them, and then not only that, but does courses. One of the most prestigious tournaments around. But yet, like a lot of people don't really know him. Like you see people talk about GFX artists, and they're like, oh, like this person or that person, and sometimes like really great names never get mentioned.
I
So
try
just
to like,
because you
yeah.
aren't like popular, that doesn't mean that you do bad work. If in fact it might mean the opposite, because you do such awesome shit that they're like, man, this person's probably booked up the ass, you know?
But I think like like I think just graphic designers in general are kind of like behind the scenes to begin with. I don't really know a lot of like graphic designers, to be honest, like in the community, other than like there's like maybe like one or two that I worked with like real a long time ago. And then there's also like Chili Repair, there's like Pleasant Alley. It's like a handful of graphic designers, right? But at the same time, it's like pop in terms of like popularity contests. I really, I don't know. I'm like really out of the loop with like everything else. So like I won't like I don't know a lot of like the major tournaments that are going on, other than what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's just kind of, for me it's like a little bit, for the better, just to kind of like keep my head clear in the space as well.
Not only
um
that, also, I think if I got overloaded with work and doing too much, like that's the thing, is that if I feel like you do too much, then your quality of work degrades. I see some people who are like pumping, they're doing spreadsheets for like 10 different tournaments. Like I personally only spreadsheet for like maybe like 2 or 3 at a time. Maybe four if I'm feeling really ambitious, but only 2 or 3 at a time outside
yeah.
of what I host. And it's it's a lot. Like you have to be able to, if you take on too much, which I have seen some people do, they take on like 10 different endeavors with GFX and sheeting, and you can just see their quality of work seriously
You
degrade.
just don't
when
live. That's it.
They
like
yeah.
Hello, that is me. Oh, no,
yeah, yeah,
no.
that's me too. But like, and I'm like
Yeah.
in a bad spot as well because like I don't like look for jobs. I just get headhunted, right? And I just say yes.
But that's
to
the best.
everyone
That's the
I'm-
best thing, right? Like you're
Yeah.
just so good that you don't need advertising, which is kind of like. And I mean, it's not that it happened to me, but kind of did. Is like I just did spreadsheeting without really advertising it, and people were like, "Oh my god, this person is like really good." Like I didn't post it anywhere. I didn't put it on my profile other than like my tournament history, right? But I didn't post it on social media or whatever, and I didn't like advertise in Discords or whatever. So, and people just found me by word of mouth, like, hey, can you spreadsheet for us? Like, I like your designs and stuff. So, I mean, it just depends. But at the same time, like, if you feel proud of your work, then showcase it.
Dude. And like even then you need to go and like search out through the community too. It's like there's not only just like us as like the only people that do things, like even through our examples too, there's people that do a whole lot more work behind the scenes, especially like for the games or for the game as well, or like for other games or anything of that sort. It's just I guess it's finding the people, and like even me and K2 like keep our head down and just like stay within like a closed small circle of people, right? It's just trying to find and break that comfort for us and like what people want done in a way. But I think that really is it. Like we don't really need to
Okay.
recap anything. You could just like go back and look at them.
Yeah, I think that just kind of covers it, you know?
Yeah, sounds good. All right. Well, I think that's it, everyone. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned to future Full Circle episodes where apparently now our episodes include tournament discussion, mapping discussion, smash or pass with spreadsheets and
I'm sorry,
forum
what?
threads,
Yo.
and anything else in between. All right. Thank you.